Amadou Sumaila was one of 118 people rescued from an inflatable boat drifting 20 miles off the Libyan coast on a clear, calm morning in August last year. The kind of day for which people smugglers hope and their passengers pray. Young Malian and more than 363,000 other migrants and refugees crossed the Mediterranean to reach Europe in 2016. Like many of them, Sumaila had never seen the sea, never imagined that so many people could be crammed into a small boat, and never thought it would be so hard to breathe. They were starting to think about death when dawn came, followed by a boat from the German NGO Jugend Reddit. The crew of the Juventa had come to save lives, but one of its passengers, the Spanish-Iranian photographer Cesar Desfali, had come determined to preserve faces. Once the 118 were safely aboard, Desfali asked if he could take their pictures. A rubber boat with 118 people is rescued 20 nautical miles off the Libyan coast by the rescue vessel Juventa. Photograph Cesar Desfali: I shot all the photos in the 2 hours before they were put on another boat to Italy, he says. I didn't have the time to get into people's stories, just to take about 3 photos apiece. It was only later, while going through his shots, that Desfali noticed the expression on Sumaila's face. There was something about the way he looked into the camera and something in the clothes he was wearing that gave the photo a texture. I don't know exactly what it was, but it just summed up the story I was trying to tell really well. The judges of the Taylor Wessing Portrait Prize were also struck and unsettled by Sumaila's gaze. It powerfully conveys his loss, solitude and determination, and chose Desfali as this year's winner. What I wanted to do, says Desfali, was focus on the lives of the people who were being rescued rather than just the number of people being rescued. ENSSA 17, from Senegal, Ousmane 17, from Guinea-Conakry and Alpha 18, from Guinea-Conakry posed for a portrait minutes after being rescued on the Mediterranean Sea. Photograph Cesar Desfali. Sumaila, who is now 23 and living in a migration center in Sicily, did not want to be interviewed. But he gave Desfali permission to share the contents of a letter in which he explains how and why he left Mali and came to travel through Algeria and Libya before climbing into the inflatable boat. Map: I am Amadou Sumaila, a Malian, a citizen of West Africa who left his country in 2015 pushed by the problem arising from the war, which made me fear for my life, he writes. I headed to Algeria, having to deal with a very difficult journey through the desert, some parts by foot, with a very strong sun over my head. But luckily someone helped me to cross that desert and I reached the city of Souaf, where I spent almost a year. It was there that Sumaila was offered work in Libya. With no knowledge of what was going on there, and nothing to lose, he made the journey. I never imagined that Libya would cause me so much trouble. I couldn't go out to the street. There were armed people in every corner. People who, if they see any migrant in the street, they kidnap you, they beat you and they ask you for money, and if you don't have anything, they can even kill you, as it was the case of some of my colleagues. 5 weeks later, he reached the city of Zintan and then, helped by an Arab smuggler, made it to Sabratha, where he found himself in jail. I had been kidnapped without knowing it. At that time I only ate once a day if I was lucky. I was in their hands. If your family doesn't have money to send, you do not eat. Some of the people there died of hunger, and those who didn't die of hunger, they died from the beatings they received, or from diseases. His luck held out despite becoming very ill. His mother sent money and, a few days later, the Arab people smuggler took him to the coast, and put him in the inflatable boat with 117 others. Hours later, Sumaila would be standing on the deck of the Juventa, staring down Desfali's lens. People celebrate after being rescued. Photograph Cesar Desfali. Thanks to Facebook, the two have been in contact for the past 6 weeks. Sumaila told the photographer that while he had initially claimed to be 16 in the hope of progressing more quickly through the system, he was actually 23. He said that he had been afraid, and had also been advised that saying he was younger would help his case. More than 15 months after being rescued, Sumaila is still waiting for news on his asylum application and nursing dreams of becoming a professional footballer. Pretty much everyone there is depressed because they're still waiting after so many months, says Desfali. It's very frustrating and can take 2 years or 2.5. If it's turned down, they usually end up on the street as they don't have deportation deals with African countries. Amadou Sumaila, photographed in the migration center in Sicily, is still waiting for news on his asylum application. Photograph Cesar Desfali. The photographer is due to travel to the European Parliament next week to present a petition calling for an investigation into how EU money is being spent to tackle migration in Libya. He hopes that his picture may help people look beyond a crisis that is all too often reduced to statistics rather than human lives. There are a lot of emotions in his gaze, which is even stronger when you see it physically rather than digitally, he says. In some way, you're confronted by his gaze and by the fact that this is a person who has a name and can be identified. It's not just about talking about migration numbers.